Everyone to our third webinar event. So a big warm welcome to everyone for joining our third webinar event for this year, 2024. And the seminar series is about the road ahead for soil health action. And we have been having these webinars leading up to what's happening next week, which is the Africa Fertilizer and Soil Health Summit. So we had a webinar on policy, a webinar on finance, and now we're going to talk about the data and the knowledge, actionable data to have impact. So my name is Lee Winowicki. I'm a soil scientist. I lead the soil and land health research theme at CA4SH based in Nairobi, Kenya. And I'm also one of the co-founders of the Coalition of Action for Soil Health. And I'm so pleased to see everyone here today. So today we're going to talk about how we can harness science and knowledge to scale soil health monitoring to generate actionable data, right? It's not just generating data to say you have a lot of data, but how can we really action this data? And the objectives are to kick off with a presentation on advancements in soil health monitoring. And then we have several panelists who will showcase the utility of these data to inform and track practices on the ground, including restoration, farmer-led restoration. We also are blessed to have someone representing indigenous communities. So we'll talk about traditional knowledges and practices. And remembering that this is supposed to be about connecting audiences and participants. The coalition is about sharing knowledge. So let's make sure that we provide space for asking questions. You should feel free to put your name and institution in the chat. Anytime you have a question, put it in the chat. We'll make sure we give you a voice. So this is our panelist, and we have the keynote from Tor Vaughan, also from CA4SH. And remembering that we're here because one of the goals of the coalition is to improve soil health globally. And we recognize that there's implementation barriers, monitoring barriers, policy and investment barriers. And so we're really focusing on that monitoring barrier today. And we often forget or take for granted, that what do we mean by healthy soil? So healthy soil is, this definition is what we like to use, is the ability of soil to sustain the productivity, diversity, and environmental services of terrestrial ecosystems, right? So it's all of these things. And we're really happy to have Joy here today from Biome Makers to talk about that underground biodiversity. And these are the 4 targets. So integrating soil health into policy. So that was our first webinar this year. Expanding research and development. That's today's research. And increasing the number of hectares of land under healthy soil practices, and increasing the financial investments by 5 to 10-fold in soil health. And that was the finance webinar. We also have these working groups. So anyone here who wants to join these working groups, just put it in the chat, your email, Daniela will reach out to you. And this webinar is essentially hosted by the Soil Health Monitoring, Research and Implementation Working Group. And so that brings me to, oh gosh, we're getting new members every week. We have 175 members to date. And people are always asking, what does it mean to be a member? So we've tried to outline this. So opportunity to participate in global events. Cash is often being asked to advise. We're working with WBCSD on their soil health indicators. So really providing expert input, connecting, and really driving this agenda forward. So we're a go-to place for knowledge, for action. And I hope everyone can get their phone out and scan this barcode, because if you're wondering what the coalition has been up to, this is our first annual report and high demand. So scan the barcode and download the 2023 annual report. This is a gorgeous document. It takes you through time from the UN Food System Summit launch in 2021, September, all the way till today, what we've accomplished and what our roadmap is going forward. So please scan this barcode, download the annual report. We can also put the link in the chat. And there's many ways to engage. We have the newsletter, the newsroom, all kinds of ways to engage. So really looking forward to hearing the voices from everyone because it's a really holistic coalition. And so as we get ready for Tor's presentation, which I hope, Fred, that you've given Tor rights to share his screen, maybe make him a co-host so he can share screen. So one of the things I want us to think about today is how we can kind of change the paradigm of soil health monitoring. There was a really cool story that conservation photographer here in Kenya just produced. You can scan this barcode and look at it. And he went to the field in Kenya and joined some of the field teams. And this is written from his perspective. And I like it because we are trying to change this paradigm from a very top-down monitoring approach to a more inclusive community engagement, because this is really what is needed to scale and to make sure these data and evidence generated are utilized. So please scan this and let's see if our panelists, help align with some of this thinking around changing the paradigm. And as I mentioned, we have had these webinars leading up to the Africa Fertilizer and Soil Health Summit. So I just wanted to give, I see Liesel's there, if she wants to come in and say something about the summit. And after the summit, almost immediately at the end of May, we have the centennial for the International Union of Soil Science. So I see Eduardo is here. So I just want to give Eduardo, give us a big plug, get us all coming to Florence at the end of May. So Eduardo, please turn on your camera and we'll give you the floor for a minute.
Okay, thank you. Can you see me? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much. Just in brief, we are coming very close to the centennial event, which will take place in Florence, Italy, from the 19th to the 21st of May. And then some excursion will be available for discussing in the field the issues related to several aspects of soil sciences. It is important to say that the centennial has achieved good success in terms of presentation. We have around 1,500 papers presented by around 1,300 people who have already registered are coming. And we have about 100 sessions. 2 of them are organized by CASH, which is very good. And some sessions are related to soil policy and are also organized by specific institutions like the FAO and for the Agriculture Organization, the Global Soil Partnership, and by the British Society of Soil Sciences. And then there are also specific sessions organized by projects. And then, of course, there are plenty of presentations related to soil monitoring, soil health, which are one of the most important topic of the conference. So all in all, it will be not only about advances in soil sciences, which is the main core business of the International Union of Soil Sciences, but also to the past achievement. So it will be a wider knowledge about soil science, also in connection with policymakers and different kind of stakeholders. So I think that this could have a good feedback, a good result. Thank you, Leigh. If you want other specific information, you can go to the Centennial website on the web, yes, or you can ask me directly.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. And thanks for joining us today. That's fantastic. And now I'd like to invite Liesel to just say one or two words about why we're just going totally crazy the last few weeks in preparation for next week. What's happening next week, Liesl?
Finally. We've been working towards the summit for more than 2.5 years. So the Africa Fertilizer and Soil Health Summit will be in Nairobi next week, 7 to 9 May. And we're so excited that it's finally happening. And the big thing related to what's being discussed today is it's all about soil health and fertilizer use, because it follows on a fertilizer summit in 2006 in Abuja. And so much has happened in the soil health space that this time it's really about not only fertilizer, but the role of soil health to improve fertilizer use efficiency and soil health in agriculture overall. So the big thing is that we have a framework for Africa to improve soil health, the Soil Initiative for Africa framework. There's a 10-year action plan and there's a declaration. So all of these will be endorsed at the summit. We're expecting it's a heads of state summit. There will be a parallel session on Wednesday the 8th, I think, from 11:30 to 12:30. Lee will be one of our panelists. That will be on demystifying soil health, because we're really hoping that the ministerial groups will be very well informed about why soil health is so important. And that includes not only in croplands, but also in the landscape, but the importance of soil health in forests and grasslands as well. And there will be a number of other side events on soil health. So I think in Africa, soil health is really on the agenda now. And this is such a big milestone event for us, especially because it's an African Union Commission hosted event. And there's a lot of work to do to implement post-summit. Malawi is a champion country that's really moving ahead with a national action plan. There's so many partners working together on this. So we have a lot of work to do to make sure that we coordinate efforts so that we, especially for implementing in Africa, that we work towards a common goal. So yeah, looking forward to see you, Lee, and other participants next week. And this is, again, a big milestone. Over back to you.
Yes, we're so excited. Thank you. And thank you for letting me put you on the spot. Now back to our scheduled programming, as they say. Thank you so much, everyone. So with that, I'm very pleased to invite Dr. Tor Gunnar Valgen, who is the principal scientist here at C4ECRAF in Nairobi, and he leads this spatial data science and applied learning lab. So Tor, I hope you can share your screen, and here we go. Over to you.
Yeah, I hope you can see my screen. So basically, I was asked to talk a bit about advances in soil health monitoring. I added mapping to the title as well, since that's one of my favorite things to do. So, but I'm also kind of going to talk a bit about how we're using this to generate actionable evidence that we're now sort of rolling out at scale across many different projects and initiatives. Lee already defined what soil health is, but in order to assess soil health, we need an indicator framework or indicators, because as you all know, soil health is not one thing; it's a number of different properties of the soil that sort of make up this whole that sort of determines how it all functions. And on the left here is just a subset of the indicators from the Land Degradation Surveillance Framework, or the LDSF, which is one of the core frameworks we use to assess soil health. So soil organic carbon is one, a very important one, and I'll focus on that quite a bit in terms of the mapping and some of the examples I'll show you, but others would include pH, soil nitrogen, etc. But also things like infiltration capacity, which are super important to be able to assess also at landscape scale. So one of the challenges we have when we're assessing soil health is that we're working across very diverse ecosystems. So here's an example of a forest called Chawia Forest here in Kenya, in Taita Taveta Hills. Basically, that's one system we might be wanting to assess or map. Another one might look more like this, where we have a mosaic of farms and forest, or we could be operating in a rangeland system. So essentially, what we need is for these types of frameworks to work across this range of different systems in order to assess soil health in a consistent way and in a way that's scalable. So we have focused quite a lot on developing in the LDSF, developing a robust sampling design to assess soil health. And that sort of consists of these sites that we generate that are 10 by 10 kilometers in size. You see them on the left there, where we spatially stratify and randomize plots, because we want the sampling that we do to be representative of the landscape, and we want to remove bias as far as we can from how we sample. And this is really key in terms of later on being able to generate high quality outputs. So it starts on the ground. This is one of our field teams in the field in northern Kenya.
I'm
And
still
there's
seeing the slide that has the Chawia forest. Is it moving forward?
It is on my side. Maybe the internet is a bit sluggish. We're having a big storm here.
Daniela, do you see, what slide do you see?
It's still the picture. So yeah, maybe if
Oh,
you
there,
stop.
plot by plot. There.
Okay, I think there's a lag. So let me jump to plot by plot and then see if it stays with us. Yeah. So can you see plot by plot now? Or skip back.
So now we see a data-driven network that has been built from the ground up.
It's just the internet here. So yeah, essentially, so basically we've been building this, up from the ground up. And I don't know if you see the plot by plot now, but this is one of our field teams on the ground in northern Kenya working in a rangeland system. And just looking at the drone image on the slide, you can see how that this system is quite degraded. There's not a whole lot of ground cover here. We have high rates of soil erosion, etc. So basically what we're doing when we assess soil health is we look at this holistically in terms of multiple soil properties, but also looking at things, other factors that are driving changes in soil health over time and in space. So through our work with the LDSF, we've now rolled this out in just over 40 countries in the global tropics. So I hope you can see the map now.
So now we see plot by plot. Maybe if there was a way for you to download it, but it's okay. We're at plot by plot now.
Yeah. It's just the internet somehow from our side. Maybe I can I'll stop sharing and
No,
reshare.
we got it. It says across the tropics now. Yeah.
Okay. It's just lagging behind. Yeah. So essentially that plot that you saw is one plot out of 160 in a 10 by 10 kilometer site. And what you see on this map, these green circles on the map are 10 by 10 kilometer sites. So there's over 250 of these sites. So you can imagine all the effort that's been going into generating these data sets on the ground in those plots that you saw, loading those up into a database, and then that allows us to start exploring and start modeling and create predictive maps of different soil properties and to assess soil health. So in essence, we're combining robust sampling, but we use simple tools in the field, and then we combine that with advanced analytics. So hopefully the slides are advancing in your end.
Yeah. Yes.
So basically on the left here, you have the tools in the field, and there's really only two things here that you can't manufacture locally. So trying to keep it very simple and, in other words, practical. And then on the right, you can see some examples of some of the more advanced technologies that we use around, for example, so the use of soil spectroscopy. So this is what Lee and her team is doing in their lab. And basically why this is important is that it basically allows us to scale assessments of soil health in ways that we weren't able to before. So because with soil spectroscopy, we've brought the cost of doing soil analysis down by almost 90%, we're able to then analyze much more soil samples, many more soil samples. So we have a very large archive at eCRAF of soil samples that allows us to then do this at scale across all this diversity of ecosystems that we are assessing and that I showed in the initial slides. And the other thing that this does is with the spectroscopy, we can predict multiple soil properties at the same time. So not just carbon, but also pH, nitrogen, various other soil fertility parameters, etc. And we can also use this technique on other materials, so not just soil, even looking at fertilizer, composition and quality. So there's lots of potential here to sort of leverage these technologies. So then what we do with all this data is one of the applications is around mapping the indicators of soil health. So we couple the data that we get from that comes in from the field and then through the lab and the analysis that happens there with remote sensing data from across a range of different platforms. So that could include Landsat, for example, which is very interesting because we have this large historical archive of satellite data, which allows us to sometimes even do reconstructions of soil health backwards in time. We work with the Sentinel-1 and 2. So we're basically merging data or fusing data from across radar sensors and optical sensors to allow us to generate predictive models that we can then use to predict carbon, as an example here from Lesotho on the right, which I hope my slide is on, and where you can see higher carbon in brown colors on the map and lower carbon in yellow. And when I don't know if any of you know Lesotho specifically, but in Lesotho we have these grasslands, rangelands high up in the mountains, so in the highland areas that are very rich in carbon. So that's those brown areas that you see there on the map. But we can also apply it in systems that are much more marginal, for example, in drylands. So this example is from Niger, where we're assessing soil health. At the bottom is soil organic carbon. At the top, we're looking at tree covers, a land cover, and assessing the change in these different indicators over time. So the left shows 2017 and the right shows 2021. And what's interesting about this is that the models are now becoming so accurate that they allow us to assess these types of changes even when they're very, very small. So here we have a change that is just over 1 gram per kilo of carbon per kilo of soil, which is about 0.1% carbon. So a very marginal small increase, but really important in this type of context where even small increases in carbon can have really big impacts on productivity within these systems. Another example would be assessments of soil organic carbon in rangelands. So this is something that we're doing now increasingly for various types of carbon projects because we know soil organic carbon is really important. And woody biomass carbon isn't really the biggest component of carbon in these types of systems. So again, another system where this is being applied. And then doing this at scale is also very important. So we're also currently developing the monitoring systems around the Great Green Wall, which span all the way from Senegal to Ethiopia. And so basically very large areas. This is a map of carbon across the Great Green Wall countries, just showing these variations across there. And then this is something that we're now developing platforms around to monitor change over time, and which will allow us to say something about what types of impacts that interventions are having when land restoration interventions are taking place. But we also work, as I mentioned, across multiple indicators. This is just another example from Andhra Pradesh in India, with carbon on the left, soil pH on the right. So you can sort of start seeing how one can combine different indicators to give us a sense of soil health overall, but also including things like land degradation, example here with soil erosion prevalence, also from Andhra Pradesh, where the yellow areas represent erosion hotspots. So, and the reason we do these types of assessments is that we also need to understand what it is that is sort of determining dynamics in soil health parameters to really understand what's driving these processes and allow us to design interventions to increase or improve soil health or restore degraded areas. Another approach that we've been focusing quite a lot on is around citizen science data collection. So you might wonder how this fits into all of this, but the idea is that when we do this type of work that is very scientific and rigorous, for example, using the LDSF, we can achieve very high rates of accuracy with the data based on the data we collect, but it's something that is still quite expensive to scale. So through citizen science, we're now rolling out this app here that you see some screens of on the slide. That's called the Regreening app. And so with this app, we now have over 270,000 farmers that are actively using it to track their interventions on their farm, whether it's farmer managed natural regeneration, so FMNR. The example you saw from Niger earlier had a polygon on it, which was one of these farmers. Or it could be tree planting, it could be nursery establishment, and we're now in the process of also developing a module around rangeland restoration. So the citizen science is a way to scale this, but when it becomes, where it really becomes exciting is when we start combining the citizen science with the type of evidence that we're generating through the LTSF, with the maps, etc. So this is what you see here on this slide, where we have a combination of predictive surfaces, and like the maps that you see here, and the data coming from the farmers on the ground, which allows us to also feed back information to these farmers. So we're not just extracting information or collecting data using citizen science, but we can start connecting farmers to these soil health assessments and feedback information on the health of their soil, giving them various types of management recommendations, basically. So that's something that we're now currently moving into quite a lot. So that's what I had, Lee. Thank you. And I hope the slides kept up with me after a while.
They absolutely did. Thank you so much. Can we give Tor a virtual round of applause? Thank you so much, Tor. And if you stop sharing, that'll be great. So thank you so much for this presentation where you brought in many elements about sampling design, soil spectroscopy, remote sensing, citizen science, and this is really important because in the last webinar on finance, there was a lot of talk about carbon markets and the need for this accurate, robust assessments of soil organic carbon at even at low levels and small changes. So this was a really important piece of the puzzle. And as we know, soil carbon is just one indicator of soil health. Of course, it's a very important indicator of soil health because it influences all these other indicators. And so I would like to welcome my panel now, because I know some of them are really going to highlight other key indicators. So if our panel can turn on their videos and we can spotlight all of you and bring you on to the screen. So with that, I'm really excited because everyone who knows or is part of the coalition, we always try to bring in voices of who? The youth. And I still consider myself a youth, but we actually have a real youth as well. Samuel, I think hopefully I'm correct, you qualify. And he has just finished his MSc in soil science. And I wanted to ask you, Samuel, if you could just in 4 minutes or less, and I can always ask you a follow-up question if you're faster, share some of the insights from your MSc thesis, which was based in rice agroecosystems, but also how it relates to soil health. And I think there was a nexus with climate change. So Samuel, please introduce yourself and a big warm welcome to the coalition and to the panel. Over to you.
Yeah, thank you so much. I am glad to come in to talk about what I've been doing so far. So I did my undergrad in Nigeria, then I came in for my master's. So I just started working with Soil Health Institute as a soil sampling specialist. Then I can just quickly share my screen. Can I share my screen just like give an overview of what I've done?
Quickly. Yep.
Okay.
Quickly.
Yeah. Let me quickly share that. Okay. So can you all see my screen?
Yep.
Yeah.
And you only have 4 minutes, but go ahead.
Yeah, okay, yeah, of course, yeah. So just like talking about soil to rice system, because for lowland crops, I feel people don't really focus more on lowland, people focus on upland crops, because lowland crops kind of generate more, in a reduced system, you see more carbon breakdown through the metagenesis. And what is healthy soil? People feel like healthy soil is like increased soil carbon storage, improve formation stability of aggregate. Then most importantly, as the previous speaker said, he talked about indicators, which is kind of very important for soil health. And also, if you can manage those soil health indicators, that means you are maintaining the soil health. So just kind of talking about rice agro system, I want to connect them to climate change quickly. So in the United States, we see that most farmers, after harvesting, they kind of like, burn the straw off. They kind of burn the husk off because it's not really important because animals don't feed on them. So we kind of see that if you can incorporate these leftovers into the soil, can they improve soil health indicators? Or should we tell farmers to burn them off? Or should we tell farmers to like, once they are burning them off, it's kind of increasing methane emission. Carbon is going to the atmosphere, which is also affecting human health as well. So in a reduced system like this, there's always a very low ORP, and there's always carbon buildup. And this carbon buildup, once they break down, they kind of go in out there into the atmosphere, leading to a lot of methane, which is also affected. So and rice ecosystem is like 10 to 20% of anthropogenic in agro-system. It's like providing 10-20% of methane emission. And if you look at what I said here is that farmers generally in the world, even in Africa and Nigeria, I know most farmers, they kind of like burn the straw off because they're not interested. So for my project, I kind of like incorporate this fresh straw. I also incorporate a burnt one. I incorporate the husk itself into the soil just to see how they can improve soil health indicators and also climate change itself. So so what I did was I just like kind of like flood them all through, looking at the control straw, charge straw, and husk. And so also for the water management, I have like four treatment. So I have the flooded one, I have the safe one, which is like alternative wetting and drying, safe, and also have severe one where we kind of run them down to 30 centimeters below the soil level. And also I have the non-flooded, which is kind of staying flooded under the soil for the whole season. So, and I also did support water sampling just to know about the chemical changes. And if you can see at the right side, you see the chamber. So this chamber helps us to kind of capture methane, which is kind of very interesting. Trying to look at how we can measure methane in the rice mesocosms. So kind of sharing
Samuel, could you just in 1 minute maybe just give us what is the 1 minute results that you found? Yeah. Thanks.
So what I found interesting here is just that in a rice system, we found that in that reduced conditions, there's always carbon buildup, and this carbon buildup, there's always methanogens breaking down those carbon, which release them into the atmosphere, which however affects climate change in terms of like people don't focus on looking at rice because they feel like just flood them, but we're trying to reduce water inputs into the soil to make sure that there's no more methane going out, because this is very important for climate, because when there's too much methane, it's kind of like affecting the environment. So what I found so interesting is that or suggest is that we do more research in rice system, mostly in lowland crops, because they're also kind of like increasing the methane emission to the atmosphere. So just like a take for Africa, for Nigeria, because that's what I did in the United States. I'm trying to like making sure we can do that in Africa as well to maintain.
And actually, Samuel, it's also in India. I think everyone here is quite familiar with what's going on in New Delhi. And so I think what you're also presenting here is relevant for rice crops globally. So thank you so much for bringing that perspective. So if you could stop sharing your screen. Yeah, thank you so much. And thanks for bringing that up, because I think it's important that, Tor was talking about mapping everywhere. And also we need to remember that what's happening is actually on farmers' fields and with pastoralists. So I really wanted to appreciate your input, and congratulations on finishing your master's. I can almost remember what that feels like over 20 years ago. So thank you. And I'm really happy to bring our next panelist, Joy, to the stage, because Joy, you hear carbon, you hear residue, and I know you're going to bring in a totally different perspective, and one that I greatly appreciate. So I'd be happy if you could share, share how farmers are benefiting from genomic biological soil analysis and understanding and improving the soil microbiome. And before we go too far, what is the soil microbiome? So over to you, Joy.
I have some slides I can share, but I don't have to if you prefer that I just answer the questions.
Yeah, let's just talk.
Okay, the soil microbiome consists of microbes that are present in the soil. We know that, soil is alive, and that, 1 teaspoon of soil can contain over 10 billion microbes. So like soil in and of itself, you can say has 10 billion microbes per gram. So it refers to changes in biodiversity for soil, functionality, and what those microbes are doing for soil health. And it's really important to monitor them. What we do at Biomakers is DNA sequence. So we're looking at bacteria and fungi in the soil and using the populations that we find and their gene functions to predict functionality and say, this is what is going on in the soil. These are the strengths and weaknesses that your soil has. Did you
Excellent.
have a second question? Yes.
Yeah. So thank you, because this webinar is very much about, advancements in soil health monitoring. So I would say DNA sequencing is certainly one of those critical techniques. So how could you talk a bit about how we can use this technology to further enhance soil health monitoring, and how far have we gotten, and what are the kind of exciting new frontiers where we can apply this?
Yes, it's how any farmer can send in a soil sample to be DNA sequenced. How far have we gotten from DNA sequencing? We have a database of over 20 million microbes, so we can ID if it's in the soil sample, we will be able to ID it, and we're always adding new soil microbes. And the benefits of using it and the access of everyone using it is that you can greatly reduce your input costs. Often we have these chemical treatment like fertilizer plants where farmers are applying a certain amount, but upon doing biological testing, you can see many times that just if you're applying nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium, you might not have the solubilizers or cyclers for nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium. So thinking about marrying the chemistry and biology and having them work together so that you're not spending more than you need to on chemical inputs and having them leach in the soil has been a really positive benefit for farmers, so saving them a lot of money per acre and then increasing their yield. As well as other areas that we monitor, like stress adaptation metrics, climate change mitigation metrics, and hormone production, so that we can see areas that are producing lower yield versus areas that are producing higher yield, and make management decisions based on the capability on a microbial level.
So did I hear you right? You have 20 million microbes in your database?
Yes.
And if you had to guess, what would be the goal? Are we aiming to build this database to?
As many microbes as we can ID that are related to agricultural functions. So all macronutrient cycling, disease, we're always adding new pathogens, biocontrol for those pathogens. So as the research comes out with more microbes, in their sequences, we ID them and add them to our database.
Wow, thank you so much. So Joy, please put the link to Biomakers in the chat. And we also have someone here from the Andhra Pradesh Community Natural Farming, and they've asked a question, so you can answer that in the chat. But also that method is very much about stimulating the microbial community in the soil. So I think there'll be even some more questions with you. So thank you so much for bringing in the biological aspect. And we are doing some eDNA sequencing in rangelands to forest here at C4ECRAFT. So I could ask you more questions, but kindly allow me to bring in my next panelist, Jeff, who is a senior technical advisor to Catholic Relief Services. And Jeff, I know you have a lot to share, and you've heard a lot that you can build on here, including something about the soil microbiome. But I'd love to hear from you about some successful examples of farmer-led land restoration initiatives and their impact on soil health. And how are you measuring that impact, Jeff? Go ahead. Oh, just unmute yourself first.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Perfect, great.
Great. Yeah, so I'll talk first about the successful approaches, and then I promise I'll bring it back to the metrics. So I'm an agronomist, soil scientist by training, and currently on the CRS Land Restoration Strategic Change Platform. And CRS selected that land restoration as the primary foundation for our work on improving rural livelihoods because it's basically we came to realizing it's pretty impossible to improve rural livelihoods without really restoring the health and productivity of the landscape. So, yeah. So in regards to your questions, I've been working on ways to increase the productivity and incomes of smallholder farmers in Africa for the last 40 years or so. And to be honest, I haven't seen that many successful approaches. But I have seen a couple, and probably the most successful approach I ever saw was the community level watershed management work that was implemented by a USAID-funded WALA project in Malawi between 2009 and 2014. So the WALA project was a 5-year project, Food for Peace project, USAID-funded. It covered 8 districts in southern Malawi, piloted watershed restoration in 32 communities across the southern part of Malawi. These were micro watersheds of about 100 to 300 hectares each. So we did our own evaluation at the end of the project, and we got very positive results. But then 2 years after the project ended, USAID hired their own consultant to evaluate specifically the watershed components. And at the same time, there was a PhD student from the University of Illinois who also completed a PhD study on those watersheds in 2016. So the two studies really complemented each other, and what they found was very clearly that grain yields and food and water security were all significantly increased, and the maize yields were 62% higher inside the watersheds than in neighboring watersheds of similar type. And then it was 2016 was the worst drought in 35 years in Malawi, and over 2 million people in southern Malawi needed complete feeding for like 9 months. But, and this was a USAID study that said households that were farming inside these managed watersheds needed no food aid or very little food aid in the worst drought in 35 years. So it's really consistent and really impressive. So that was dramatic, but they were worried to some extent about the sustainability. They didn't see communities investing in maintaining the water management infrastructure. So fast forward to 2021, 7 years after the project had ended, there were some graduate students from the University of Notre Dame who went back to those watersheds to see if any were still functioning, and if yes, what factors had led to their sustainability. So the graduate students selected 7 watersheds from the USAID study that had been rated as high performing and 7 that were rated as low performers. And they went back to those watersheds to see what was going on. Those of you who do rural development work, what do you think? How many of those watersheds would you expect were still operating?
All of them.
Yeah, right. That's exactly right. So 13 out of 14 watersheds, the watershed management committees were still functioning, and the infrastructure was all being maintained. And those communities said they were maintaining those watersheds because their maize yields now were higher in bad years than what they used to get in good years. Big. Their incomes had notably increased. The water security was very much increased. And their impacts of climate shocks like droughts and floods were almost eliminated. It was terrific. So then, of course, I was looking at that and I said, well, is this normal for watershed management work? So I went on Google Scholar and found as many studies that I could find. And I made a table, which I would have showed you, but I didn't take too much time. But they all basically said the same thing as the WALA. Grain yields were often increased, were increased consistently, often by 50 to 100%, which is exactly where our metrics lie. Increased incomes, increased water security, and often very significant expansion of irrigated areas. And wherever it was reported, there were increases in fodder availability as well. So those are all the impacts that we're trying to achieve, right, from development work. So takeaway from me, I'm an agronomist, right, looking at plots. But I discovered, and it's pretty straightforward if you're like someone like Lee, that what happens at the landscape level directly affects farm level productivity and soil health. And soil health and land restoration, for that, we need to act at both the farm level and the landscape level simultaneously. And I'm concluding, actually, coming to the conclusion that the biggest and most rapid gains that we can make in improving livelihoods are to be made first by working at the landscape level and then at the plot level. Another thing that was notable, when communities take responsibility for the management of their own natural resources, the goals are both transformative and sustainable. So, and lastly, I'll come back to the topic of the webinar, and that is, these communities really didn't have metrics by which they could, demonstrate to outsiders or even other community members what their impacts were. And they really need those. And I was looking at really interesting at Tor's presentation and thinking, actually, some of those might be a really useful link. And if we did a national level, communities could really contribute. So thank you. I'll stop there.
Wow, thank you so much. I mean, it's like almost the closing remarks. It's just perfect. And I also wanted to appreciate the other metrics, like not dependent on food aid, improved yields, improved fodder productivity, and all of this. And this is why we really talk about the coalition, having the outcome of healthy soil, because it will have all these benefits. And just looking outside here at these massive rains here, we know a landscape approach is important, because what happens upstream is going to affect downstream. So with that, Jeff, thank you so much for those powerful insights. I really appreciate. And now I would like to bring in Ekwe. Dosa, I'm sure you were very happy to hear Tor mention, the Great Green Wall, at least dabbling a bit in West Africa and the Sahel. So Ekwe, I invite you to the panel to just in 4 minutes only, tell us what, I know we're going to be at the summit together next week. And so this is your warm up. Could you share some of the latest advancements in monitoring in projects with IFDC, International Fertilizer Development Center, to improve soil health and agricultural productivity? Over to you.
Okay, thank you, Lee. And quickly, I will share the advances with you. First, I want to talk about things that we do to improve soil health. We implement ISFM, Integrated Soil Fertility Management, but in a context of integrated farm planning, which puts the farmers at the center of innovation. We work with the farmers to make a diagnosis of the constraint to soil fertility management and put up the possible solution, including the indigenous one. And with the farmers, help the farmers to select which one he wants to implement. And of course, there is a monitoring to see how the technologies are performing, and if there's a need to do some adjustment. And that farmers who is the innovator farmer is also putting up a demonstration when he's testing the technology, and gives an opportunity for other farmers to learn from him. That's the farmer-to-farmer exchange, which is a good way to scale up technologies. That's the fifth approach. We're also working on using the space-to-place approach for fertilizer recommendation to smallholder farmers in sub-Saharan Africa. It's an initiative to increase fertilizer use efficiency. And basically, the goal is to reduce wastage at the farm level by improving use efficiency of and economic returns on with better targeted technologies. So the approach enables the delivery of specially appropriate soil fertility management recommendation guided by soil maps, and also combined with farmers' level plot characteristics to come up with a recommendation that is a very good match with the farmers' local conditions. As a result, we get farmers tailored recommendations that provide the better returns on investments of farmers in the fertilizer or any soil fertility amendment. So that approach has been tested in Ethiopia with very good success, and we are scaling up in other sub-Saharan African countries. And we're also working, it's a concept now, to develop organomineral fertilizer to improve soil health. And it's a new concept that takes organic feedstocks, such as biosolids, livestock manures, food waste, and to combine them with mineral fertilizer to produce a more desirable nutrient content. And basically, today, there is a growing market for the demand of organomineral fertilizers, mostly in Africa. And if they are properly designed, they can induce a good response, a crop response as good as those induced with mineral fertilizers. And of course, integration of organic materials with mineral will contribute to improving soil health. In short, that's what we are doing right now. But in terms of monitoring soil health, we basically, our approach, which is a smart approach, we do a global soil fertility mapping to know where are the limitations, the deficiencies, and the constraints. We do that using a mapping of 5 by 5 kilometers grading to complete soil analysis, a complete one, including micronutrients, secondary, and also micronutrients. Of course, pH and carbon are included. And we use the West, we recommend the West chemistry approach to do most of the analysis just because of their reliability. And based on that soil fertility mapping, from there, we can do some field validation trials to confirm the importance of adding each single element to any initial fertilizer formulation before we can bring it to scale. So, but here, our approach here is the best bet approach. We are not focusing on best fit approach for fertilizer recommendation improvement, just because of the conditions of smallholder farmers. And this has been tested in Eastern Africa. We are reproducing it in West Africa, and we are getting some significant improvements in terms of yields. And all those things are within the context of integrated soil fertility management. Organic inputs are very, very important in whatever, in the packages that we are recommending. In terms of monitoring, that's what I said. Basically, we do have some soil health indicators. In the integrated farm planning, we teach farmers to recognize soils with good aggregation, soil with good organic matter. And here, we know that particulate organic matter is the best, but farmers cannot use it. But it's one good indicator for land management, or organic imports, water holding capacity. But also, you know, the plant is the best indicator of soil health. So farmers will learn from the behavior of the plants whether the practices are paying back compared to the plots that have not received that improved management.
Thank you.
Thank
you so much. Okay. We're going to have to end it there, but thank you. What I really appreciate about what you're saying is that you're really bringing in the farmer focus, everything from, you know, training and working with farmers to the monitoring, to checking the crops, to actual management, the integrated soil fertility management. So with that, Egwe, thank you so much for joining us and also bringing the perspective from West Africa a little bit. And I look forward to seeing you next week. Now with that, I'm really happy to bring in our final panelist, who is going to have the big job of wrapping everything up. You know, I highlighted that we're really proud that we're always bringing in youth, but something that we're also really excited is bringing in, you know, perspective of indigenous peoples. So Drupad, you're the special advisor to the Indigenous Partnership for Agrobiodiversity and Food Sovereignty, TIP, and you have many other hats. So you have, you know, 5 to 7 minutes to really share with us insights from indigenous people's traditional knowledge and practices that really can lead to scaling soil health. And the tough question I'm going to ask you is, in what ways can the science that we just presented with Tor's presentation and others and indigenous knowledge systems come together to more effectively build healthy soil systems? So over to you, and thank you so much for being here today. Namaste.
Thank you, Lee. It's a pleasure being here. I think, you know, today I was in the field interacting with Karen farmers in the uplands of northern Thailand. And we were discussing just this, you know, what are the things that they do in regard not just to the farm level activities, but at the landscape. And I could see a lot of resonance in the earlier presentations, starting all the way from Tor's presentation, where he gave some of the, you know, very effective and methodologies which to monitor soil health. Now, to start off, when you look at indigenous practices and perspectives, you know, they have a wide range of practices which help soil health, starting from things like zero or minimum tillage, mulching, solarization, weed management, and using weeds or the heap of weeds as as nutrient pools, so that the crops actually immediately mop up the leachates rather than depending on the soil pool for the nutrients. But they go even further. There are crop combinations that they have, soil types, and what sort of crops do well with that. What crops would help in improving soils? So if you have soils which are, very low in organic matter, are pebbly or have stones, what are the crops that you put in so that it helps improve the soil? What are the steps that you take to ensure that soil fertility, moisture retention is improved? Interestingly, I was among the communities in Northeast India just last week, and in just one village, they had listed over 171 tree species that they have. Out of that, 51 tree species they nurture because they know it's good for the soil, right? Then you go on to practices like fallow management, which is at the landscape level. Geoff, I think these are things which would interest you, and I'm sure you'd have come across in your work in Africa as well. When the community, the farmers, and particularly indigenous people look at where to do the cultivation and what they need to do, they were telling us that they first look at the landscape, right? And when you say the landscape, they say, what sort of trees are growing there? What are the color of those, the canopy? Is it dark green? Is it light green? What sort of leaves do they have, right? Are these broad leaves or are they narrow leaved? And we could go on and on. But basically, what you find is indigenous people have practices at the micro level. They go all the way to the landscape level. Unfortunately, we haven't given enough attention to that. And we haven't really partnered with them to find the validity or the scientific rationale behind that. And this is where the partnership starts off. I think this is required, so critically. And as you know, we have very little time for reaching the 2030 SDG goals. We have got a lot of work to do and do it very fast. So one of the things we need to do is partnerships with scientists where we co-develop, we look at, one, assess these practices, and two, co-develop the solutions which are there. Now, there's a little bit of emphasis I want to give on this for a very important rationale. As scientists, we develop our knowledge by having the experiments done. In other words, our knowledge generation is experimental. You do experiments, they work or they don't, but it adds to the knowledge. For the indigenous people and rural folk, the learning is experiential. It's through empirical experience gathered over generations that the knowledge is built up. And I think this is a very important point because it helps scientists to, as it were, short circuit the time that we take for, getting knowledge generated. If we partner, there are already practices that communities or indigenous people have. We need to actually look at the scientific validity and the rationale, and then together co-develop the science. I always say this when I'm talking on this subject. I say scientists have the luxury of failure, but farmers and indigenous peoples do not have the luxury. What do I mean by that? You see, we are carrying out experiments. Even if it fails, our salary comes in. But for the farmer or the indigenous person, if they fail, it could mean starvation or food insecurity for their family. And therefore, they will adopt those practices which work, which gives us, it cut down on the time required for us to develop a solution. And hence, if we look at indigenous people's practices, rural farmers' practices, these are actually templates of soil health management approaches, which we need to verify and then co-develop into solutions. I think there is one important last point that I want to make, and that is that it's about time that we realize we need to decolonize science. Science goes beyond just the scientific, experimental knowledge. We have got to bring in this empirical knowledge and actually work together to, one, validate, and B, use that to come up with the solutions. I think, what we have heard from the panelists today show us various ways in which these partnerships can be done and how the two can be very effective. In the beginning, Todd talked about the need for citizen science, for scaling, the efforts. I think there is a need for this partnership with indigenous people, with rural farmers, for scaling up. And it's only together that we can ensure that the urgency of action which is required, we can achieve by 2030. Thank you very much.
Wow, can we just give Dhrupad a round of applause? That was very motivating. I really appreciate how you're saying there's no time, and when you work with farmers, when you work with indigenous people, you don't need to tell them that, they know that. So thank you so much. That's fantastic. Can I just invite all the panelists to come onto the screen, and we will, including Tor, so we can take a nice a video or whatever that's called, a screenshot. And I just give one sentence or one word, actually, only one word for you to just tell us what's your call to action. Many of us will be at the Africa Fertilizer and Soil Health Summit with member states, the Soil Health Action Plan for the continent, and then the International Union. So I will start with Joy, then Tor, then Jeff. So just what's your one word, what's your call to action? Joy.
It's hard, one word. One word call to action, test.
Excellent. Tor, you can say a couple words if you need.
Decolonize. I know I'm stealing it, but that's my word.
Dhrupad, you've inspired us. Jeff, then Ekwe. And Jeff is going to learn
thanks.
how to.
Yeah, I'm on. Yep. Okay. As I think landscapes, think community-based natural resource management, think participatory monitoring and evaluation. Thank you.
Awesome. Ekwe, then Samuel.
Yes, I will say participatory and also making available to farmers simple indicators that they can use to check their soil health.
Nice. Samuel.
Yeah, I would say regenerative farming.
Woo, nice. Dhrupad. And you can't say decolonize again. That's already taken. Oh, you're muted, Dhrupad. Sorry.
Yeah, partnerships.
I love this. Thank you so much. And with that, I think Danielle is going to take a nice photo of all of us. Thank you to all 50 participants. Thank you to this amazing panel and for all the insights. And let's keep the momentum growing to scale soil health, to scale farmer-centered restoration from the soil up, remembering the biological, the chemical, the physical, all the components of the soil ecosystem. With that, I officially close this webinar and sincerely thank everyone for your dedication and your time. And I look forward to the follow-up conversations and hearing all about the great successes. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Bye, everyone. Thank you so much for
Thank you.
joining, and thank you for the panelists and speakers.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye.